right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Happy Friday. Welcome back to our spotlight on quality extravaganza. I'm Brett Norton from Beyond Clean, and I'm here with Lindsay, my colleague and coworker.
Yes, hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah, great day, and it's Friday, so we're really excited. Before we get started on this next presentation, I just want to call to your attention on the upper right hand on your screen. You will find a list of resources, including downloadable documents that have been provided to you by the conference speakers, organizers, and sponsors. During each Beyond Clean conference this year, we will be offering bonus content on various topics. Since we're encouraging you to fight dirty every day, we will be talking dirty during these bonus sessions. And the first one is about sterile processing micro-credentials and the future of sterile processing. Never before seen content for you, the attendees, so feel free to view that on demand at any time.
Yeah, and Brett, a brief note on that. That's a link to a YouTube video. So that bonus content is available to you to come back and view whenever is convenient for you.
All right. So now to the star of our show. Stefan Kovach is a clinical educator emeritus at Healthmark Industries. Having started his career in healthcare as a sterilization orderly in 1975, Stefan has held many healthcare positions and is considered a subject matter expert. Known as one of the most influential people in the sterile processing industry, Stefan has received many awards throughout his career, including the Award of Honor from Isham for his dedication to sterile processing. Poor device quality, as we all know, can impact patient outcomes and the survival of medical facilities. Stefan is going to share with us the concepts of a quality management system and the importance of an instrument inspection for the safety of our patients. He will outline techniques and concepts you and your sterile processing department can implement as part of your quality management system for inspecting medical device performance and quality. So let's welcome Stefan.
Welcome, Beyond Clean and Healthmark Industry present Prove It, a spotlight on sterile processing quality. We are going to talk about today instrument inspection and quality documentation. My name is Stefan Kovach, and I am your presenter today. I have been employed with Healthmark for 21 years. I started as an orderly in 1975, a sterilization orderly, and since then I've held many positions. I've won many awards. I sit on many different committees, and it is my honor to present to you today. Healthmark has a policy, and it's about educating our customer. And it's our commitment not just to sell you products, but to give you quality education and to back it up. And we believe our best customer is an educated customer. My personal disclosure is, as I said, I am an employee of Healthmark, and we're out of Fraser, Michigan in the United States. I'm involved with the manufacturing and distribution of medical products to healthcare facilities and healthcare professionals. I am not receiving any compensation for this presentation. The opinions are mine as a presenter. This presentation reflects techniques, approaches, and opinions of myself, the presenter. This sponsored presentation is not intended to be used as a training guide or for promotion. Before using any medical device, review all relevant package inserts with particular attention to the instructions for use, warnings, and precautions. It is very important. I want to take this time to thank the Beyond Team Clean for inviting me to speak to you today. Let's get started. How many of you have ever been called into a room or a theater for one of these concerns? This instrument has a stain on it. Can I use it? My shaver locked up. It's not running anymore. This picture is foggy on the screen. I can't see anything with this scope. These scissors aren't sharp. They can't cut anything. Call sterile processing now. Where is that manager? What mark of quality are you leaving on your work? I've been there. I'm from the old days. And yes, I've had instruments thrown at me in the room. I know. In today's world, that doesn't happen. I want to start you off with a couple quotes, and I wish I knew where I got them, but this is to help set up this meeting. Quality comes not from inspection, but from improvement of the process. Inspection is part of the process, but one must use the inspection to improve the process to bring about any quality change. Quality comes not from inspection only, but from applying the inspection results to make improvements to the process. As with any program, there are objectives. This is an introductory program to quality and what poor quality can have on the patient and the staff. We will specifically look at an ultrasonic cleaner, orthopedic shaver, and a scissor. I will tie those together for you. The main objectives are review the concept of a quality management system, QMS. Define inspection and performance as it applies to medical devices when it comes to guidelines, standards, instructions for use, and others information. Review techniques and concepts that departments can use as part of their quality management system for inspecting and checking the performance of medical devices. Discuss the cause of poor quality outcomes. Objective 1, review the concepts of quality management. A little history, and today I know we have people in SPD, CPD, CSSD, MDRD. I am just going to use the term SPD. I know we have an international audience out there, and I thank you. This information transcends no matter where you're at. So when we think of quality, as I looked into this, I believe we should really look at our roots back in medieval Europe when craftsmen began organizing unions called guilds. They put strict rules together for service and quality. They had inspection committees, and they put a little mark on their work. The craftsmen themselves often placed a second mark on the goods they produce. At first, this mark was used to track the origin for faulty items, but over time the mark became to represent a craftsman's good reputation. Inspection marks and master craftsmen mark several things for proof of quality. This approach to manufacturing quality has dominated until the Industrial Revolution in the early 19th centuries. We sign our name to checklists all the day. We sign our name to so many different things. When you sign that name, that is your mark of quality. As you know, I'm a little older than most of the people out there, and I want to show you this quick video on Inspector 12, and hopefully you'll get a little smile out of it.
Is he gone? Okay, trainees. Inspector 12 here. Now, what do we do before we call this Haynes? We stretch. We poke. We Oh, Inspector 12. I was just,
Every Haynes T-shirt and brief has to pass 11 quality tests and Inspector 12.
Kid, your day will come, but until then, they don't say Haynes until I say they say Haynes.
Now on sale, Haynes men's fashion underwear.
They don't say a complete, clean and functional, sterilizable, or high-level disinfectant product or tray or instrument till I sign my name on it, right? Just like the Haynes inspector. So the other part of Objective 1, I hope you got a little smile on that, or maybe you saw it. There's a whole lot of them on YouTube on Inspector 12. But there's a couple terms I feel we need to make sure everybody understands the definition as I go through this program. The first one is QMS and PQA, Quality Management System. It is processes focused on what your customers' needs and requirements are. It's an organizational, it's a structure, and it's to implement part of quality management. Product quality assurance testing, PQA, is testing the healthcare organization shall perform clinical evaluations and or performance evaluations on surgical sets or other devices as required by national standards. In sterile processing, we must deliver what we promise the customer. What do they want? A defect-free product on time, clean and functional, to be able to be sterilized or high-level disinfected. And that's when you sign your name. SMK or number 342 or whatever it is, that is your signature that is a quality product that they are going to use. When we speak of quality management, most people come to mind, gosh, I don't really know much about it, but we do. So we're going to stick with the sterilizer. And there's three terms: the IQ, the installation qualification, process of obtaining and documenting evidence that equipment has been provided and installed in accordance with its specification, its operator's manual, its instructions for use. Then the OQ process. It's a process of obtaining and documenting evidence that the installed equipment operates within the predetermined limits when used in accordance with its operational procedure. And PQ, performance qualification, process of obtaining and documenting evidence that the equipment is installed and operated in accordance with what you found. Your sterilizer comes in, they put the steam, quality of steam. They then figure out that they have to use a BI, Bowie Dick. They use clinically relevant evidence-based products according to the manufacturer's installation and what's in the standards. They commission it. They say it's ready to use. And then what do? You use those same tests that they did in the IQ, OQ, and your PQ. You use the Bowie Dick, the chemical indicator, the biological, to make sure it is working correctly. And we're going to use that concept as we go through on other parts of this program. So within sterile processing, we have many different approaches to quality. Many of us are just used to hearing quality assurance. It's sort of mandated, can be reactive, focus sometimes more on clinicians, individual performance. It's outcome focused. They look for outliers. Quality management is more self-motivated, focus on process improvement. It is outcome linked, can be across functionals. It's all about process improvement. And sometimes there's an overlap of this, but it's all about quality and getting to best of the class and what's best for the patient and also for you, staff. So objective 2, define inspection and performance as it applies to medical devices, guidelines, standards, and IFU. If you look over to the side of this slide here, since I know we have an international audience, I've tried to give different standards that are out there. So there's the EU standard for endoscope reprocessing. Did you know there's an ISO standard 7741 that scissors and shears, it tells you what type of test you should use to make sure your scissors are sharpened? And for those of you in Canada, Z 31418 on device reprocessing. Or in England, HTM 0101 on decontamination of devices. You have different ISO standards, 15883 for washers. And for us in the U.S., the labeling, that's very, very important, the FDA labeling. And what's very important is many products are sold in other parts of the world, but they're not sold here because they have to meet the FDA requirements. And then for us, there's AMI SD 79, 91, 90, TIRs, SG&A. But then there's also the manufacturer's IFU. I've looked at over 900 different IFUs, and they all either use the word inspect or inspection appears somewhere in that IFU. So this topic of inspection and inspecting is very important of what we do every day. So definition of inspection within our department. The process of using the unaided eye alone or in conjunction with various aids, borescope, stain identification, simple magnifying glass, and in functionality, a sharpness test, leak testing, so on, finding pits, stains, imperfections on the medical device during its processing cycle, and rejecting the device according to the medical device's IFU. If any of these imperfections are found, it's rejected. In theory, each time we touch a device, we are doing some type of inspection, whether it's in a pill pouch. You're looking at that pill pouch as you're putting it on the shelf or taking it to the room or putting it in a case card. Is the pouch intact? The tips inside have a tip protector so it doesn't go through. How does it look? And so on. Again, I'm focusing here on the U.S., but this is very important. For products to be sold within the U.S., the U.S. FDA actually has guidelines for a manufacturer to follow in general on what they need to put in the IFU. All routine cleaning instructions should include instructions for visual inspection, which may include use of magnification and adequate lighting. The instructions should advise the user that if the device is determined not to be visually clean at the end of the cleaning, the user should either repeat the steps or dispose of the device. Additionally, visual inspection instructions should identify acceptance or failure criteria of the device, unacceptable deterioration of corrosion, pitting, cracked seals, as well instructions of proper disposal. So you should know how to test, do different things for the device, and know if something is faulty. Standards that support visual inspection. Here in the U.S., Standard 79. Instruments should be carefully inspected for flaws, damage, debris, and so on. Verification of the cleaning process. They talk about protein as a marker commonly used to evaluate cleaning efficacy. They supplement when maybe the IFU doesn't give you a lot of information. You have to use your critically thinking skills. Support for magnification could be a flexible inspection scope or a borescope. If you look at the person on the left, she has a magnifier on the spring arm, but if you notice to the far right on her table, she also has a hand magnifier. You might need one or two different devices to check, because some IFUs might say you need 4x, 2x, or whatever, but you need to have the right tools, and these are just examples of it. Again, I know we have some surgical techs out here, and I'm trying to spread out to show you the breadth of how the different standards and guidelines are out there. Within the AST standards, they say items should first be inspected for blood and soil that could be left after decontamination. Instrument function should be tested to determine if the instrument needs repair, sharpening, or replacement. You have to check whatever it is. Is it functioning? Because remember, clean and functional. Remember, we're going to talk about scissors later. Cutting edges of scissors and other sharp instruments, such as trocar, should have no burrs, cracks, scratches. How are you going to find that out? Looking under some magnification. The blades of the scissors should close smoothly and be sharp enough to easily cut 2 4x4 gauze sponges. Now, many of you use latex and non-latex TheraBand, but I grew up with scissors, cutting through gauze and making sure there was no snags. So there are many ways to test a scissor, but we're going to show you how that fits into the quality management system later on. So the IFU. And again, I understand that there are people from all over the world. Beyond Clean just gets people from everywhere, and that is really great as we share this knowledge. And is a DFU, a MIFU, MIFU, and IFU the same? IFU is instructions for use. That's what we call it here in the U.S. There's also directions for use. It's called that in other places in the world. And in Canada, it's called the manufacturer's instructions for use. In my mind, they're all the same. And they all have the basic same definition. And I'm just going to take it from ANSI AMI ST79. Written recommendations provided by the manufacturer that provide instructions for operation and safe and effective use of its device. And why is that important? Legally. This is what you should do each and every time. If you decide to do something else and there is an issue or at fault, your facility takes on that legal responsibility if you haven't done your due diligence to show your way is better, or it didn't go through some committee or risk management. And there are enough lawsuits out there that show when people have not followed the IFU that they are sued and there are settlements made. And unfortunately, a lot of the times patients are injured. So there's a legal aspect of it. Provides the best outcome. I have another slide that'll go through that. It's doing the process right each and every time. Auditors are asking you, where is it? How are you following it? Where do you keep it? Paper, file, computer? I want to tell you just recently, for those of you who don't know, Idaho's a state here in the United States. I was in 2 facilities, and it's the first time I had seen this. And I know it's happening more places, but they actually had on a little spring arm, a little pad that the staff could touch for the IFUs to pull up electronically. And then the staff said, I asked, what happens if you don't have it? Well, they have them on paper or somewhere else, but they knew where to get them. They were right there and they could touch it. That is amazing that this department was doing that and so far ahead of what I'm seeing other people are doing. And changes, how are they handled? Do you get all the information? I have a really unique slide that I'm going to share with you, and I want to make you think later on, are you really getting all the changes that are out there? So here in the United States, again, the IFU, if it's a Class 2 or Class 3 device, Class 1 doesn't have all these. They should be there, but you have to have them on file if it's going to be through the FDA, Class 2 and 3. Validation of the cleaning and sterilization procedure by the manufacturer. That manufacturer, that orthopedic set or whatever, they're the ones who actually did all the validation on cleaning and sterilization. And I know some people might not want to hear this, even though washer companies in that say they put an orthopedic set for this and this time. You still need to refer back to the manufacturer of that orthopedic set and break it down and do it their time. It might say minimum, but if they say minimum of 6 minutes, that's the minimum you need to do, not something else, because they've done the validation. For cleaning, it is a procedure to remove residual patient soil along with any residual of cleaning solution. This validation is part of the submission process to the FDA, and it is reviewed by them. That is doing it the right way legally, following their IFU and their times. The goal of cleaning validation is to prove that when the instructions in the IFU are followed, the residual soil level on the device will have been reduced to acceptable levels that have been accepted by the FDA. It's important to note that completion of a successful cleaning validation alone does not ensure that device reprocessing by the end users are clean. The end user's ability to perform the cleaning by understanding and following all the steps in the IFU is vital. Can they follow them? Do they have all the tools? Do they have what they need? So I'm now going to show you a couple IFUs. This one here, it says detailed step-by-step validated reprocessing instructions are found in the product-specific instructions provided with every instrument. The reprocessing instructions must always be carefully followed to ensure a properly cleaned, disinfected, and sterilized instruments. Compliance with reprocessing instruction is dependent on adequately trained and educated sterile processing staff. Was your staff trained on those instruments? Did everybody know how to take them apart? How to hook them up properly or whatever had to be done? It's right in the IFU, right there. How about this? Visually inspect. Inspect the handpiece to make sure there's no visible soil damage, signs of wear, and/or corrosion. So how do you define that? What are corrosion? What's wear and tear? This one, inspect components for any damage before and after each use. If damage is observed, do not use the instrument until it is repaired. What is damage? If it's not defined in the IFU, then the facility must decide. Critical thinking, what is damage? Or maybe you write the manufacturer to get a little more instructions on what damage is or what you need to look for. Or this shaver, visually inspect the handpiece, including internal surfaces for remaining soil. Use an endoscope camera and endoscope if necessary. Or this IFU, check the device for visible soil. It is recommended that cannulated be inspected with illuminated magnifying scope. So what if you have 4 or 5 different companies and 2 are saying this and the others don't? You work with your risk management, your IP, and you put a good policy together because you need to check them all the same way, because maybe those other ones just say inspect to make sure they're visually clean. And if you're using one way for one, you should be able to use it for the other. Make sense? Inspection, inspect. What are you doing to make sure it's the same across your instruments and medical devices you're using? One IFU on scissor inspection. Before preparing for sterilization, all reusable instruments shall be inspected for cleanliness and integrity, the ability of the reusable instrument to function. Cutting edge should be checked for sharpness and damage. Careful inspection and functional tests of the instrument before use, the best method of determining end of serviceable life. So they might not tell you how, but you'll use your critical thinking skills, you'll use standards, guidelines, peer-reviewed literature, and you'll come up with the best way to test those scissors or whatever it is each and every time. And again, I'm going to use that as a specific example later to try to tie this all in. This here, I just want to mention to you, I know this is beyond clean. I think this article was from Michael, who's one of the podcasters, and he works with Hank and Bob and everybody. And I think he works for a major repair company. And he wrote an article on visual inspection. What's in your department? That's not a picture from his department. But if you look, they have a borescope or a flexible inspection scope. They've got a magnifier. But this is very interesting what Michael wrote. Subtle instrument failures can have dramatic impact on surgical outcomes. Broken scissors can leave behind fragments inside patients. Unfinished edges on ribbon retractors can result in torn vessels, and hidden bile burden can result in infections. Failures in sterile processing have a direct impact on patient outcomes, and it is critical that leadership give technicians every tool necessary to perform at the highest level. What great words, Michael. A wonderful educator Michael is. But that is true. You have to have the right tools. And for those of you who haven't sat in a surgery and they're doing cutting a carotid or doing a lima and an open heart or tying a vessel, and those tips and those castroviejos, they've got a little burr or a nick, and that microsurgery, that could ruin the surgery right there. It's very, very important that you're making sure those scissors are sharp. There's no nicks, burrs, or whatever. So how many of you can say yes to this question? Remember I said I was going to show you something about IFUs? How many of you have said, I've never gotten the IFU on that product, or it's been too long, I didn't know it was updated? How can I make a change if I don't get the information? We don't get the updates. They go to supply chain. Do any of these questions sound familiar? Well, have you ever thought that the staff who does your deboxing or putting your supplies up have no idea how important the IFU is to you and your team? Have you? In some places, you have supply chain people stocking and bringing in out of the deboxing room and that. Look around. The picture I'm going to show you is real life. I've been accused of taking pictures everywhere, and I do. When I go in, I look for everything, and I want you to look at this picture. That is a trash receptacle outside of a sterile processing where somebody was deboxing it properly, and they were throwing all the paper away. There are 5 different IFUs in there. There's a wrap IFU. There's for a handpiece. There's surgical instruments. They are there. They're just throwing them out. Now, maybe they've been told to. I didn't go up and ask the person. I just took the picture. I didn't want to embarrass them. I didn't want to do anything. But what if they weren't told? How many times have you gotten a product and you don't get all the paperwork? Have you as a manager, supervisor, leader, coordinator taken the time to sit with them and say, you are just as vital as we are in ensuring that we do best in class? We need all that paperwork, and we'll decide whether we need to throw it away or not. Thank you for giving that to us. I see it a lot. Well, that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of it. I know. But if any of you say you don't get it, maybe you need to look at what's going on in your facility. Just one of the reasons. There's others, trust me, but this is one. Objective 3. And again, I'm not picking on supply chain. I don't want anybody from supply chain. I don't want to get a bunch of emails saying you're picking on me. People might be doing just what they're told. Okay? Objective 3. Review techniques and concepts that departments can use as part of their quality management system for inspecting and checking performance of medical devices. The PQ, performance qualification, IQ, OQ, PQ, risk management. You want to do this when it arrives, when it's being used. What if it goes out for repair and it gets returned? Apply the principles, the standards, and the guidelines and the IFU to your practice. You'll try to use clinically relevant and evidence-based products as much as you can. We're going to look at 3 specific instances of the PQ, using the PQ process for installing a sonic cleaner, using enhanced visual inspection, scissor sharpness, and finally, fires in the OR. We've got about a half hour left, or about 25 minutes, because I am going to make sure we have time for questions. And in case we don't get all the questions, I want you to know Beyond Clean will get them to me, and I'll return and answer them as quickly as I can. Examples: installing a new sonic irrigator, what to test and what to document. So we know the standard says that when you have a sonic, you should check for cavitation, external surface cleaning, and if you have lumens, the ability to clean lumens. We are just going to do one critical parameter, and this one is just cavitation. Process of obtaining and documenting evidence that equipment has been provided and installed in accordance with its specifications, its operators, instructions for use. Appropriately and correctly installed ultrasonic cleaner, defining the critical process parameters, controlling and monitoring systems for critical parameters, calibration schedules, etc. We're only going to look at cavitation. So you will get your manual, you'll get it there, and you'll read it. Hopefully, they will tell you how to check for cavitation. Let's say they don't. You will then go to your OQ, process of obtaining documented evidence that the installed equipment operates within predetermined limits when in accordance with operational procedure. If you bought a Sonic and you just installed it, and you didn't check it for cavitation, how do you know it's really working? And when it breaks down, this is where the OQ is. You define the process parameters, the quality criteria, then challenge those process parameters for cavitation. You are providing cavitation. You will use evidence-based, clinically relevant products. Now, I do some that they say use a foil test, and they install it. And when you use a foil test, there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to make sure you drain it, clean it. And if little foil broke off, you have to run some cycles to make sure there's no little foil pieces left, because if it comes back through recirculating, what if it gets on an instrument and sticks there and gets through and gets on a patient? So it is a way. But then I see people do that, and then they don't do it as their PQ process. They say it worked when it came in. I see failures all the time. So you look for products that are out there. This product, I can say it is sold by us. It is the Soniccheck. Within its IFU, it uses the words qualification testing and routine testing. That's what it sets up for. It is set up for only to check cavitation. So performance qualification, demonstrate that the process is constantly producing acceptable cavitation. So what is the time limit? How are you checking it? Procedure for addressing failures. How do you recertify, re-verify? Cavitation is a cavitation each day it's used. There is peer-reviewed literature that show many of the products that are saying they check for all forms and all the inputs of a sonic cleaner don't check for cavitation. They're really soil removal tests, and they're giving you a false sense. So how do you know your sonic's really working? So you put it in, you find out OQ, IQ, PQ, you test it every day with a proven test. If it doesn't pass, you then figure it out, you put through, and you go and find out what's wrong with it. You should do this just like your sterilizer. I see sonics failing all the time, especially the multi-level ones where they're only working on 1 or 2 level and they're not working on another level. Had they had checked it when they bought it, they would have seen it might not have been working, and they would have rectified it then or maybe not even buy it. But you have to believe in a product when it tells you when it passes and when it fails. And if you put in a quality management system, unbiased products, you will make sure it works every time, or it'll work before you put it in. So, installing an orthopedic shaver, what to test for and what to document. I broke this one out a little differently for you. Appropriate and correct defined critical parameters, controlling and monitoring those parameters. The example is a clean and functional upon arrival. When you read that IFU, you got to test it electrically and so on, but you also want to inspect it with a borescope. But you inspect it when it comes in. When do you inspect it? You should check for leakage and seals to the motor. You've got to plug it into a console to make sure it works. But in most IFUs, it says clean it first before it can be used. So then you're going to clean it the way you're supposed to, inspect it with that borescope. You might find there's rust or some things in there already that if you didn't notice that and document and take a picture, that might be acceptable. But if it comes through after it's been used and you say, is that blood or what is it? So you define the correct process parameters and the quality criteria, then challenge those process parameters for the defined parameters in the IQ process. And then you come to the PQ. You must demonstrate it. What did you use in the OQ? You might have used flexible inspection scope, a borescope. You made sure it was working every time. So when it comes for you in assembly, you're going to look with the borescope. You're going to plug it in, make sure the motor works, make sure the seals work with different tests. You're going to put that in as your regular monitoring. You're going to document. If it doesn't work, you'll send it out or whatever. But if you do this when it comes in, you now know it works. You know what you must check for, and it must meet those requirements. Scissors. Steve, you keep talking about scissors. Appropriate and correctly functional scissors. Are they sharp? Examine and test upon arrival. You're going to look at it, make sure there's no burrs and blades, check it. But again, that IFU says you inspect it, you send it through the washer, manually keying. That's when you're going to check it again, and you're going to accept it or not. So you'll define what criteria. Maybe as the IFU that I showed you, it says you got to go through gauze. But if you have a policy that says you're going to use some non-latex material, you back it up with the right footnotes that instead of using gauze, you're going to use whatever, blue, green, red to test it. So each time those scissors come back and you're in the assembly, you're going to, how do you hold it? How do you test for failures? You're going to look for nicks and burrs, and then you're going to test it. And if it doesn't work, you'll send it out for repair. When it comes to repair, you're going to do the same thing as it comes through. I forgot to tell you this quick little story on the shaver, because I got extra minute or two, is I was at a facility and we were actually showing them a flexible inspection scope, and they actually sent their shaver out for repair, and she was putting it in. And I said, let's inspect it. We inspected it, and it was still dirty, and it was unbelievable what was in there. They sent it out because there was a fray in the cord, and that's all they fixed. And we found out that there was more to it when she inspected with the borescope. They tried to clean it. They couldn't get some things. They didn't know if it was blood or rust. They sent it back. But they didn't have the quality process in that. This is how I accept it. And did they do what was needed to make sure it met those? If not, you send it back. IQ, OQ, PQ, it all fits in there. Okay? This here is a guy who sharpens scissors on the street. And I know that's not the type of person you use. You all use quality companies out there. But if not, I want you to look up at the left-hand corner of my slide. Notice those scissors. I pulled these out of a department because I was talking with some staff, and they weren't testing their scissors. And they said, yeah, some of our scissors, they don't seem to cut right, and they come back. Well, if you can look at I don't know if I can get my pointer. Look at how the person shaved too much here. Look at the brand new. And then you come over here. Look how he's cutting and how he's shaving the blade. When this gets together, they don't meet right and they don't cut, because this guy or whoever was probably somebody like this saying, let me sharpen your scissors. Is he really qualified? No, well, this person isn't. That's Inspector 12. They weren't inspecting this properly when it came in to make sure they were usable. And this is a guy who was just whatever. So again, I found these in a department, and no wonder they were having problems with their scissors. They over-sharpened them. They did different things. Maybe you can get one sharpen out of it. I don't know. I'm not a scissor repair person. But make sure if they are out in a truck, you go out and visit them and figure out what's going on. And then give your staff the OR, repair tags, good, sharpen. Check scissors blades to ensure proper functioning. Blade should open and close smoothly. Testing cutting performance at 3/4 lengths of the blade with the material recommended below. Scissors should cut all the way to the tips. And this is from another manufacturer, and they actually tell you what you can use. So again, you're supposed to be testing it. You should have this available for your staff. I came from the day where if the scissor wasn't sharpening or hemostat was off, they tied it with suture and threw it in, and then you put it in the repair box. Now we got nice little tags in that. Fires in the OR. I want to thank Jahan Azizi. He's one of our educators. He's an engineer and a biomet guy. He's worked at a couple great hospitals, also worked for the FDA. I also consider him the father of the flexible inspection scope, or the bore scope. You should read some of the articles he's done. But surgical fires are a big issue. 550 to 600 fires occur yearly. One source is the cord in surgery, can be a source for fire. Risk assessment. Think of QMS. Risk assessment is a term used to describe the overall process of evaluating potential risks involved in something that's going to maybe cause harm. When something in the healthcare environment is viewed as a potential hazard, patients' lives can be at risk. I'm sorry, I have a little lisp today. I've got something going on with my teeth. I feel really bad, but hopefully you can understand every word I'm saying. The steps to mitigate the risk, identify hazards and risks and the factors, determine appropriate ways to eliminate the hazard, rate the severity of the risk. And now here's where we're going to get into it. As many of you know, here in the United States, we just put in these amendments, and the Amy Ansi ST79 applaud you guys for these amendments when it comes to insulation testing and checking cords and so on. As I told you again at the beginning, you got to read all the IFUs, but I am just taking snippets, and here's from one. It is recommended to establish a procedure review by which the cord's electrical continuity is regularly tested with an ohm meter, as well as frequently inspected of the cord's installation before and after each use for cracks, nicks, abrasions. Using a cord which is damaged, worn, or until it is inevitably failure, it is possible that it will overheat and either ignite itself or ignite nearby material, and inherently dangerous to both the patient and operating personnel. So where do you find when there's fires in that? You go to the FDA MAUD report. Steve, this is 3 years old. Doesn't matter. I'm using it for an example. There's a potential for the cord to spark and cause fire. During laparoscopic procedure, the Bovie was not working. How many of us have been in a procedure where they'll go, turn up the coag, turn it up 5 more, turn it to high. No, turn it up. I can't cut. I can't do it. There could be something going wrong. Maybe the tip isn't clean, but it could be the cord. It could be the wire inside the cord. The power is increased to 30 to 35 to 40. Sparks came from the cord where it was attached to the machine. The cord separated from the hub at the connection and fell to the floor. The plug remained in the machine. The end of the plug was red hot, and the end of the cord was red hot and smoldering. The Bovie machine was checked for electrical problems and nothing was found. It was returned to service without incident. Culprits, the cords. You got lots of cords. You should be checking these cords. Should have been checking it before. Most people don't read the IFU. I'm going to tell you, if I did a survey before SD79 came out, I don't know many people checking with a continuity tester. They're out there. They're available. Work with your supplier. Yes, our company has one. There's many that are out there, but we got one. You're using cords that should be checked. Check those IFUs. And if they don't, they just inspect, then you need to, how critically thinking your skills are going to say you're going to test it. So here's the cord. These are cords that Jahan shared with me, pictures that actually burned and caused problems. Look at those. The IQ when the cord arrives. Establish the critical parameters. The IFU standards 79 addresses this issue. You should check it when it comes in. No nicks. No, it's all intact. You pull it. Make sure it doesn't come apart. Do both the cord and inside the wire. Establish how critical parameters can be confirmed. What testing equipment do you use? And not all testing equipment is the same. During the assembly process, test each cord according to the established critical parameters. How important it is. You don't want a surgical fire, and we can prevent them. Where's the Smokey the Bear? Only you can prevent forest fires. You can be part of preventing fires in the OR when it comes to checking these cords each and every time properly. Documentation of your inspection at each step. In the United States, in court, the medical record is the care rendered. They say jurors view good record keeping as an indicator of good care. Poor documentation can create an aura of poor care and damage the credibility of the healthcare providers. How many of us have been looked at our records and see blanks and we didn't sign it off and didn't do it rightly? If it wasn't documented, it wasn't done. If you did it, document it. Remember Nancy Chobin saying this, Peggy Ryan, my friend Ray Tarasi, Rose Seavey, Dave DeGrossi. My friend out in Colorado, Damien. The people are teaching this. All our educators, document, record your findings, protect yourself. How many of you have live? I usually ask, raise your hand if you've been in a deposition before. I have. Not nice. Documentation is what they look for. Walk your talk. What are you doing? What do your SOPs say? Objective 4, we all want that sign in front of us. Poor quality is lawsuits, lost jobs, poor images, poor outcome. Nobody wants to come to your facility. Poor process equals poor outcomes. Stay out of the headlines. Stay out of it. Here within Michigan, in the last year, CMS penalized 24 hospitals. 54% were in my southeastern Michigan. These are just headlines randomly taken. Would you go to one of these hospitals if you saw this in the headline? If you had a choice, people are going to think loss of jobs and things like that. It is up to us to control what we can do. It's very, very important. So I want to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that they at least have DI water and it's white. The bad is they have an air, but they don't have a gauge. Trust me, there's no gauge up there. You got to know the pressure. And the bad is they got Dr. Goo there. Ooh, yeah, but you know what? He can take stains off like no tomorrow. Well, if you got stains that bad, you've got cleaning problems, chemistry problems. You got lots of other issues. Plus, that stuff isn't meant to go on medical devices. How do you know you're going to get it off in the residual? All within this department, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Quality is ongoing. You must remember this. Quality is dynamic. It happens with new staff. Look at new staff. For us older staff, they're going to challenge you. They're going to come in with new ideas and say, why did you do this way and so on. Don't take it negatively and don't go and say, why aren't you doing it this way? Work professionally. New products, new procedures. Every time there's a new procedure, new product, all the staff should see how it is. Assembling, cleaning, sterilization. Not just one time. Managers, supervisors, leaders, coordinators. That's up to you to make sure your staff is well trained. There's new guidelines, new standards, new scientific knowledge. The new 4 amendments to AMI ST 79. I was just in another department a few days ago. They had no idea, never even heard of them. Going, what? What are you talking about, Willis? Come on. Let's get with it. And for those of you that are parts of the world, you've got new standards and guidelines going on. Really. So how do you continue to improve? Network, tending like this. Once we can get personal, get back, talking to your friends after the meeting, answering questions, understanding scientific knowledge, evidence-based, clinically relevant products. Take responsibility. You have to take ownership. Ask questions. Audit the process. Upgrade your knowledge. I'm going to tell you, for me, we use a friend, Rod Parker, one of the best scientists and speakers I know. He breaks down that orthopedic stuff great. And I have heard him speak many a times. Sometimes I won't ask a question in public because sometimes I don't understand some things. Rod breaks it down really good. And I'll go up to him on the side and say, Rod, could you break this down simply? I'm not sure what it is. And yes, I've been embarrassed sometimes, but I usually ask. But sometimes I do go to the side. Ask the questions, find a way, learn the knowledge. That's all very, very important. That helps you do a better job for your patient and everybody you work with. These are some closing thoughts. And I have a story here. I got about 7 or 8 minutes. Hospital organizations that do not consistently address changing conditions will be changed by the agendas of others outside the hospital organization. We must be active in change. As healthcare professionals, we must embrace the possibility of change in enhancing our quality system and work towards a better system. If we don't become active ourselves. Somebody else will tell us to do it. Now, this is an I story, but this is back in 1994. I know that's 25 years ago. My friend Ann Cofield, who was Isham's representative on ABE, I was the president of the Michigan Society, and they were this was the old ST35 and before it became SD79, they were talking about flash sterilization and all the issues, and she was contacting all these presidents of different societies. And at that time, my society was part of the American, not part of Isham, but Ann and I were friends. I got our board to write a letter to Amy that we support what the Amy committee wanted to do and change when it came to flash sterilization. I still have that letter with me today that Joe Llewellyn wrote me on us being active, our whole board representing our membership. We took an active role. Be an active role in the committees. Talk to the people who represent you. Don't sit on the sidelines no matter what it is. There are so many people out there, and more of you need to be active. You've got to be active. You hear it talking all the time. Don't sit at the sidelines. And you know what? Join your professional groups. Do those things. I'm getting too much on a high horse here. So got about 3 or 4 slides left. We're going to get to it, Lindsay, and everybody out there at Beyond Clean. I promised we'd have some time left. So when it comes to inspection of medical devices, the first standard is it visually clean and functional, the unaided eye. Second is if it's dirty, clean, you send it back. You examine both the external and internal surfaces. Is it damaged? Is it functional? This takes place every time you touch it. The second, some form of enhanced visual inspection. The IFU will give you direction. You saw where we use inspection. Some say you can use a magnifying glass, borescope, use what is appropriate for what you're doing. Then others, you might want to see if there's a stain, might be using a simple eraser to see if it's rust, or is it organic soil, blood, protein, ATP. You figure it out, understand the type and sort of the stain, helps you reduce the chance of it reoccurring. That's very important. So who's telling this to you? Your manufacturer's telling you, your standards and guideline. But lastly, your customer is. They want a clean and functional, sterilized HLD item used on them. They don't want a dirty scope or dirty instrument. You make sure it's functional. If you put in a QMS process in your department, you can do it. You can do tray audits. There's a whole lot of things you can do. When it comes to cleaning equipment, it's the same thing. Man and machine get together. They're imperfect. Things are going to happen. Do regular inspection and testing. Automated washers, sonics, cart washers. I gave you just an example on cavitation earlier. What do you test? Look at the standards, what the OEM says, depending on your cleaning equipment, cleaning process. You might have to do temperature, dilution, impingement, cavitation, pulse flow, a lot of things. Use true surrogate devices, real-life conditions. Make sure the products you're using, when they have clinically relevant evidence-based information behind it. Record and document your results. This is part of your QMS. Again, think of your sterilizers. You should be doing that with so many other equipment and processes in your department. Can't do it with everything, but you can do it with a lot of things. I'm going to close with a couple quotes here. An ounce of prevention can yield enormous return for your patient. Competency and training of staff are key to reducing HAIs and SSIs. Do it right each and every time. It must also be understood that implementing of any quality improvement or risk-based program does not always prevent incidents from happening, but they will help reduce and understand those incidents better if they do occur. There is no silver bullet. But if you do it, it will help reduce it. If there's an issue, you have data to help figure it out and to improve. Think of those quotes from earlier in the program. So, contact information. Who am I? Got my phone number, got my email, got our website. I'm going to close you with something here with about 5 minutes left. Some say that knowledge is power, but I say the real power is when you share your knowledge with others. Please share the knowledge you gained today with others where you work. And there's 6 more hours of programs out there. If you can't listen to them all today, go back and listen to them. And remember, keep this in mind. You've got to remember this. You are doing amazing things right now. Build on this success to make change where change needs to be made. I've showed you some bad things, little good things, and you're doing a lot of good. Use that to improve and keep moving forward for your patient and yourself. Thank you today to Beyond Clean and for all of you who have attended this and are going to watch it later on. It's been a pleasure presenting, and now we're going to see if we have a little time for questions, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. That was great. Looks like we've got about 10 minutes for some great questions. We had some roll through, so I will address one that I thought was particularly interesting. So, Stefan, what are some examples of common shortcomings you have seen in IFUs? And what are some best-in-class info you have seen in IFUs?
Can you guys see me and hear me good now? Because that was recorded. I'm okay, Lindsay and Brett? Okay.
Yep.
So
you're with us.
I have to address this again from the U.S. perspective, is every time the FDA updates their labeling document, it was last updated in 2017, and before that it was 1996, and before that it was in the 80s. The items that have already been approved end up being grandfathered. And that's just the way our system is. So there is a lot of, unfortunately, poorly written IFUs that might just say soap, use a soft bristle brush, and that's it. They don't have to go back and change them. They've been approved, and that's the way it is. And the really best example is to think of the orthopedic shaver. This happened in 2009, where the patient in a hospital in Texas, 7 other people got an infection. The FDA put a warning letter out and said, you know what, you should use some type of video borescope or inspection scope on these shavers. They didn't make everybody change it, and only 2 companies or 3 really changed it, which was great, but the others didn't because it wasn't made as strongly and it was already approved. So the shortcoming is that a lot of IFUs don't get updated when the standards change, unfortunately. And the good ones are those that are being approved since 2017, but also companies, and I want to give the name out to Arthrex and Stryker. They changed their IFUs to reflect and use some type of video to examine better. So again, it's up to the customers, us, to put, I don't want to say pressure, but to let them know what's not right with the IFUs. And there are a lot of sterile processing managers out there that do that, and they can affect change. So that's really it. There's just some old ones that are still out there, and the companies don't have to change it. And that, to me, is the biggest problem. That's my opinion, of course, but that's the best way I can answer it. The new ones are great. And, you know, the other thing, Amy has worked with ISO, and I forget, I'd have to ask Damian Berg. He was co-chair, I think, with my boss, Ralph Basile. There's a format Amy is trying to get everybody to go to, that all the IFUs will be a certain way. So it makes it easier for everybody. And you're seeing that. And I'll give you one more example. When the water document came out, there's utility water and clinical water. The new IFUs tell you if you should use clinical water or utility water. Within that document, it tells you that, rather than in older IFUs, it just says tap water or use DI water. They're using these terms that are well defined, and that makes it easier for a department to do the right thing, and then they can get the right type of water treatment that's there. So it's getting old IFUs updated. They really don't have to be the way it's written. Okay? Hopefully I've answered that.
Yeah, so we do. With scissors, there are several varieties of the same scissor, SS, gold, black, titanium grade, yet for the same size, we test exactly the same. how can a sterile processor distinguish if a scissor is sharp or not if we're testing all the same?
Well, they're not, technically it shouldn't be the same. There is an ISO document that I referenced earlier, and it's missing my mind. And that actually goes through and they talk about using gauze and different layers of gauze. What people have used in the last 20 years, they've used TheraBand, the different colors, I think it's red or yellow or red and green. Because of the thickness, it represents the skin better cutting through. So it's based upon the length of the scissor, and that tells you what to do. And there's some really, Isham's got it, CVSPD, AST tells you to use gauze. And it's all learning how to cut it and hold it and make sure there's no snagging. So unless you're using gauze, there's different layers of gauze based upon the type of scissor. So what I'm hearing is that probably within your department, you don't have a well-defined SOP, standard operating procedure, or general document on how to test scissors. So it should be upon the overall length. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's 5 inches and under you use this color or bigger. But there is different material based upon the length, so they're not all tested the same. They are divided based upon their length, and that's very easy. Work with your instrument original OEM or whoever does your repair. They should give you an in-service on how to test the scissors properly and what you should look for and what material to use. Okay?
Great.
Got another one, or we almost done?
Yeah, we've got about 4 minutes. If you got 3 minutes or so, if you got a couple more in you. What's your thoughts on doctors stating that their scissors are not working after a certified company has serviced them?
So we had this problem, and it will always come up. And you must remember, surgeons or the person who uses it is still a feel. If they don't feel right to them or it doesn't cut right to them, it is still their perception. Their perception is their reality. So my suggestion, what I have done in the past, is bring those surgeons in and get your repair company to talk to them what they do and how they make sure that they are sharp or what you go through, and also show the surgeon what your staff is doing. Now you must understand, I'm going to make 2 assumptions here. One is they're not testing the scissor every time. And so if they're not testing it, if that scissor went out to repair and it was sharp and it was used 3 or 4 times, and if you're not testing it, you don't know if it got dull. So the other way would be you are testing it every time and you're documenting it, and you can show the surgeon. But if he works with your repair company with that technician, he can find out if there's something they can maybe do or he can explain. But you have to get that surgeon to understand what you're doing as a quality process and get those 2 people together so he can have confidence and just say, this is repaired. It might have a number on it to say it's been repaired so many times. There are different ways you work with your repair company, and yes, you can label each scissor and have an identification number on it and say this goes out every 2 months or 3 months, and show them what you're doing. And I think that will help reduce it. It did in my case. And they didn't know we were testing them. And that was my fault because I didn't relay that to them. So again, they have to know what you're doing, but it'll still get back to the field because they're using it. Okay?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stefan. I think we're about out of time. Just a reminder to everybody out there, if we didn't get to your questions, we will certainly, Stefan has already said that he will email you directly. You can also get in touch with him directly. And, you know, if questions come up after the presentation, or if you're watching this on demand later on, certainly feel free to send those questions his way. And some great answers, great presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Brett,
it was an honor to sit through that.
Hey, Brett, I'm sorry. I know I talked quickly because I wanted to get through it. So for those who said he talked quickly or had a little echo, I was in my basement, but I wanted to get through it. And please contact Beyond Clean or through me if you think I misspoke or said something. Challenge me to get you the information, and I will work with you to get you the best answer. And again, to Lindsay and to Hank and Bob and Michael and Justin and you, Brett, great job. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Be safe and healthy, okay?
All right, thank you. We'll see everybody in 15.